I prepared a presentation on what I call punk rock resistance. For those of you who don't know, my group before we merged with Solidarity Warriors was called Punk Rock Resistance, and it was taking a different approach to resistance and what's coming up and what we're going to need to do. And it ties into the question of music and how that affects the way resistance works. And we have talked a lot, and the movement has talked a lot about taking lessons from the civil rights movement. This is going to focus on more the punk rock movement of the 70s and 80s and how that's different, but there are still lessons that we can learn from that. And without any further ado, I will get into it. So, like I said, before Solidarity Warriors, I was running a group called Punk Rock Resistance. And my story when it comes to being involved in punk came from a moment in 1987 when I was 15 years old and a freshman in high school. I was in a pizza place that had two video arcade machines. As a 15-year-old in the late 1980s, that was the place that you hung out because there was pizza and video games. And the proprietor, his name was Irwin, was talking about how he had grown up in the 1960s, but he wasn't a hippie. And why he wasn't, he was busy being an entrepreneur and starting his own businesses and working 80 hours a week and just didn't have time to get into that. And he made a comment because my parents were hippies. They went to Berkeley from 64 to 68. They were as quintessential as you could get. And even at that young age, I knew I belonged in the counterculture. And he said, you know, the punks are the counterculture of this generation. And you don't think a comment like that can have that big an impact, but it fundamentally changed who I became from that point on. And as I got more into high school in particular, I got more involved in the punk movement. So what is punk? It's more than just a genre of music. It's a subculture that includes a diverse and widely known array of music, ideologies, fashion, and other forms of expression, visual art, dance, literature, film, anything you can think about, it touches. And it's largely characterized by an anti-establishment view and the promotion of individual freedom, DIY ethics, and the culture comes as an offshoot of the music. So it's all closely related. But the ethos by itself is primarily made up of beliefs such as nonconformity, anti-capitalism, anti-authoritarianism, anti-corporatism, do-it-yourself, anti-consumerism, anti-corporate greed, direct action, and not selling out. That all comes from Wikipedia. So this idea has formed a whole bunch of things. And like so many cultural phenomenons, it means different things to different people. To me, punk was a lifeline to people who have been traumatized, abused, neglected, and rejected. The people that get cast off, forgotten, and otherwise ignored in schools. And we'll come back to this at the end a little bit, but ultimately it's a community of unrelated people providing mutual aid, sometimes in unconventional ways, starting with the purpose of basic survival. I mean, a lot of people would wind up on the streets, they would wind up coming from bad home situations in every way that you can imagine. And people in that community literally stitched together what they needed to survive. And sometimes that meant squatting in a vacant house. Sometimes that meant, driving over to somebody's house when they were having a crisis, whether it was a mental health crisis or otherwise. Sometimes that meant protecting people from physical abuse. And this is where the idea of destroying everything and starting over comes from. So there have been a lot of people talking about, you know, some of the more extreme fringes of the movement and why are they coming from that point of view? And I'll talk a little bit about it. The way I like to describe it is if the hippie movement of the 1960s was the euphoric drug-induced high of optimism, punk is the crash of despair reflecting the population that society is left behind. It's the hangover from it. You know, it didn't have the optimism and hope that there would be a better world because so much of the world was in despair for them. You can't talk about punk without talking about punk music. And you don't need to listen to the music to be punk. I'm going to put some links in the chat that will tell you some people who are punk, but not into punk music per se. There is a group of people that would say if you're punk, but don't listen to the music, that just makes you a poser. But that's also part of the ethic that the idea of authenticity was really important, but it's not necessarily dictum. And so it comes from a lot of different places, but ultimately the music and the culture are intertwined and they feed into each other. What I like to say is that the music helps channel anger and depression and all sorts of negative emotion into a cathartic release. And it allows one to get rid of that in a way that's not violent or destructive or self-harming. Kind of, it makes you feel upset and angry and energized and happy all at the same time. Wikipedia says the punk subculture is centered on a loud, aggressive genre of rock music called punk rock, usually by bands consisting of a vocalist, one or two electric guitars, a bassist, and a drummer. And in some bands, the musicians contribute backup vocals, which typically consisted of shouted slogans, choruses, or even football-style chants. Examples of iconic punk bands are the Sex Pistols, the Clash, the Dead Kennedys, and more recently you have bands like the Dropkick Murphys and Billy Bragg, even though those bands started 20 years ago. There's another generation or two after that that I'm not familiar with because they came after me. So I'm not even going to get into that because it's an area that I don't know. But when people ask, where is the protest music of today? I say it's wherever the music brings the punk out in you. And in one of the articles, they even talk about Mr. Rogers being punk. And the idea of individualism and mutual aid all get tied in together with it. So is punk right or left? Well, it's both. But the interesting thing is there is no center. And what I mean by that is the anarcho-communists famously adopted a punk culture. And because it is so far outside the mainstream, punk tends to live on the political fringes. Many of these anarcho-communist groups and others on the far left organizations overlap with punk culture in a lot of different ways. The anti-authoritarianism, they don't want somebody telling you what to do. They just want to be an individual and who they are. This is where you start to see the beginnings of gender fluidity in the idea that non-binary was something that existed back then, but it was called something different. And it certainly wasn't accepted in the mainstream the way it is then. You know, you see the Morrisseys and the Robert Smiths and wearing the eyeliner, and even people like Boy George with the full makeup, um, people or men wearing lingerie on stage and in public are just a few examples. Things like Sinead O'Connor shaving her head can all be seen from a punk lens to it. Um, so these far left groups tend to want to have a society where there is no government that is telling them what to do. It's based on a commune and communal mutual aid philosophy, and that is where the order and structure comes from. At the same time, many of the organizations on that side are, you'll see things like Black Blocs started as overlapping with punk. There are groups like Rush or Sharp, which are the racially united skinheads, or skinheads against racial prejudice, and Antifa all grew out of this subculture in a lot of ways. And like I said, there's a lot of overlap, which is very strange to think that the other side of this is as far right as you can go. The racially united skinheads are in response to the actual skinheads who were neo-Nazi organizations and embraced fascism and libertarianism to the point that they wanted nobody telling them what to do. The difference is that point of view, first of all, was very violent and very destructive, but also embraced a rugged individuality versus a communal form. So on the right, you had people who wanted to do whatever they wanted, no matter what, and not rely on anybody else. Whereas on the left, you're still talking about a society with no government, but it's based on communal help. And that's the difference between the two sides. And this is kind of where the political spectrum wraps around on itself, and the two far ends of left and right wind up right next to each other. But there is no middle. There is nobody saying, oh, we should have elections with and support the Democrats or support the Republicans, or have, laws that tell us what to do and what not to do. So that political aspect of it can't be separated from everything else. And a lot of the music reflects some of those ideas and thoughts. How is it relevant today? Well, there are lessons to be taken in resistance from the 1980s and the 1990s in the same way that there are from the 1960s. Right now, there's a lot of anger that is brewing just under the surface. And particularly the hippie movement and some of the nonviolent movements of the 1960s didn't really harness that in the same way that punk embraces it and makes it part of the ideology. But when you have that as a source of strength and creating resilience, it makes it easier to go through some of the difficulties that are ahead. A punk ethos can do that. And it includes guidance into techniques that can be used in the unique environment that we find ourselves. It doesn't just need to be looking back at the civil rights movement as the only place that we can get inspiration and find useful tactics and actions to come along with. For example, some punks have participated in direct actions, such as protests or demonstrations, but also disruption, ecotage, street barricades, squatting, pirate radio, off-grid energy, graffiti, vandalism, and public and business property destruction, and indirect action through counter-propaganda protests or boycotts. They can support and squat in urban and rural collective housings with group funds held in common. So it truly is small form communism to keep everybody together and keep them alive and keep them sane. Punk also has always appealed to a younger audience. It's always been people who are alienated with little hope for the future and looking out onto the world saying, well, even if I do go to college and I come out, where am I going to be? Prior to the punk movement, every generation was better off than their parents were before them. But that hope and that opportunity wasn't the same starting with Ronald Reagan, where people would come out of college, and that snowballed into the world we live in now, where students come out with so much student debt they'll never be able to dig out of it. There's no way that they'll ever be able to afford a house, and that they're not going to be better off than their parents were, simply because the opportunities aren't there. And that writing has been on the wall for a very, very long time. And the oligarchs have accelerated it to the point that we are now. And it has just gotten worse. Finally, you can't talk about any punk culture and be complete without noting that many of the loners who wind up committing acts such as school shootings and mass shootings previously had an outlet and a community that they could connect to in a way that would demarginalize them and give them a place to be safe and find help. And with the age of the internet, where people aren't congregating and going to the same places, that just simply doesn't exist anymore. And that is an important note, because there is no other place that existed, and it does not exist now. People say, how did this happen? Where did they come to this? These are the same troubled kids that have been around for generations, but the society that was there to support them isn't doing it anymore. And now you're starting to see the implications of what that means. So with that, that is the short version of my presentation. I'm going to put some of the links in the chat so that you can see where this came from and some more information. And feel free to ask any questions. People did give us some feedback that they wanted to know why I think what I do. I try to explain that to the best of my ability, but if it doesn't come through clearly, I will be happy to expand and explain that. So does anybody have any questions?
We don't have any questions. I would like to open it up to a bit of a continuation of our discussion last week when we were talking about creative things that we can do at protests. Cynthia, I love that you bring Native American drums to the protests. I think that's amazing. I would love to hear about that if you want to get off mic or get off mute and talk about it, but you certainly don't have to.
Speaking of creative ideas for protesting, many of you may know that Donald Trump has had a state visit to England this week. And there were two things that I found notable in ways that the English were able to protest about it. One is they made the world's largest picture of Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. It was the size of a football field, something like 93 square meters. And then they took that and projected that picture onto the side of Windsor Castle before he showed up. I thought that was brilliant. The people who put it up did get arrested, not surprising. Um, but it's easier to do in the United States and not get arrested, and it's easier to do it in a way that is invisible. Um, but the other thing that they did is they went to Donald Trump's golf course in England where he was playing and put a little plaque on the benches at his golf course that said, "In memory of Jeffrey Epstein, a terrific guy. Hope to see you soon, Donald Trump." And those are the types of ideas that we're looking for. What can we do that's going to have that kind of impact and make a difference? So, um, all right, Jack, that's a great question. What made me come up with this idea is, first of all, at our last meeting, somebody had brought up the punk rock resistance that I had done before this. We had talked a little bit about the music and protest music that we can use now. And that snowballed into this idea that we don't need to draw just from the civil rights movement and bring that into what we have here. And I think if we expand where we come from and understand the different cultures and are able to harness them, there's value there. And again, it can help us approach the problems that we have now in a different way, because I do think there are limitations to approaching this the way they did in the civil rights era, because it's a different world. And the punk part of it reflected the different world of the 1970s and 80s and how that changed. And I think we can synthesize and incorporate everything from further back up through what's happened today. Um, and I think the punk movement actually is better able to tap into some of the anger that people are feeling now and channel it in any constructive resistance, as opposed to some of the other forms that it can take that are very destructive. And I think being able to do it is a useful tool and a subject that, like so many other things we talk about, nobody else is talking about. And you don't see it coming up and other parts of it. Um, and to me, some of the punk songs really are able to reflect the dissonance in some of the situations. Songs like Career Opportunities by The Clash and some of the songs by Rancid and the Dead Kennedys, bands like the Violent Femmes also really bring together the despair and the hopelessness and give you a way to fight, if that makes any sense.
When I used to go to punk shows in my early 20s, I used to have this feeling of elation where I just loved that this whole crowd was there together and into the same thing. They were all there for the same reason and they were so excited about it. And that's how I feel at protests. I mean, that's one of the main reasons that I'm a political organizer, is that feeling of solidarity when we're all united in our purpose. Jenny, 1 second. Demetrios, you had your hand up earlier. Did you still want to speak? All right, Jenny, go ahead. Oh,
Sorry, I
there
had
you
trouble getting off mute. So Morgan and Tiffany, you both on like the planning committee for the October 18th No Kings here in Denver?
I
Yeah,
think you could say
so
that. Yeah.
Solidarity Warriors has been part of the coalition that's been organizing them since back in February, or no, sorry, April 5th, I think was the first hands-off protest. So that's when we started getting involved with that.
Okay, because I guess I'm wondering, given sort of talking about music and how that can bring people together and being there for the same reason, have y'all thought about doing something like that October 18th? And of course, I'm thinking about Jeanette and leading a sing along or something. Have you thought about anything like that?
Yeah, so I talked to Jeanette. She's gonna be out of town pretty much between now and then. So I talked to Johnny Five from the Flowbots, who started the No Enemies protest singers that Jeanette is part of. And he is going to see if we can round up some folks so that we can do some singing, a sing along, and we're gonna work that in.
Okay, great. And are you planning on a march as well, or?
We are meeting up for our first Zoom meeting tomorrow. I would definitely like to see a march. It can depend on the resources that we're able to gather, like safety marshals. We don't want to lead a march of 10,000 people if it's not going to be safe, if there's not enough safety marshals or peacekeepers there, especially with some increased opposition that some protests have been facing. So that'll mainly depend on resources, I think, but we definitely want to have one.
Based on the feedback that we've gotten, if it's up to me, there's going to be a march, but it's largely, like Tiffany said, going to be logistical as opposed to desirable. We want to do it. It's a matter of, can we get the marshals and everything in place to do it safely? But the intent is to have a march.
Okay. Well, and I'm just thinking about ideas. I'm wondering about a sign making station because I know people will get there without signs and want to have signs and see signs that they want to replicate or something like that. So I'm just trying to think outside the box a little bit and thoughts and ideas of things that can.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. I know we were trying to do that. There was another group of people that was involved in having a sign making station. So I don't know if it happened or if it was just small. But with how big the protests get, sometimes it's hard to find everything.
Sure.
But definitely, I want to see that again.
Yeah.
So those are great ideas. Those are the kind of things that we want to do that are outside of the box.
Yeah, and I think especially given just gosh, the environment that we're in right now, if the focus can be on togetherness, like you were just describing, Tiffany, and love and hope rather than anger, I think that will might be helpful for a lot of us, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I'll bring that up with the speaker committee and see what we can do to bring some love and hope into it. Because we've
And
definitely talked about that as an organization about how um, hope is really the way forward. I think that was one of the things that Kamala Harris brought to the campaign trail that was what really got people behind her and excited.
and just to be clear, when I talk about punk and the anger that is inherent in it, I am not advocating that as an end to itself. Actually, what punk does is take that anger and turn it into energy to do something useful. And what it does is it protects the people in the movement who have nobody else protecting them. And it takes anger that comes from trauma and depression and relieves it in a way that isn't harmful. Go ahead, Laura.
Okay, am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Good. I just wanted to ask, are you allowed to chalk down at the Capitol? Do you need special permission, or is that illegal?
We do it all the time.
Okay, so I was wondering if
Did
you can,
Chalk?
Chalk.
Did
you
you
know,
say chalk, like sidewalk chalk?
yes.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I was wondering if you do something creative with chalking. You know, you get centralized on an idea and have the crowd participate in some kind of chalk event. Have you done those?
No, we haven't. I love that idea. Their Indivisible Denver Action did send out an email recently that had a really cool idea in it, is to take sidewalk chalk with you wherever you go and write "No Kings" to the date October 18th, and then the location if you know it for whatever your nearest city is. Our protest is going to be, I believe, on the west side of the Capitol, and also in the Lincoln Veterans Memorial Park, which is right across the street from the Capitol. That's where the first No Kings was, in Denver. But yeah, I would go ahead and write those things on the sidewalk, draw a little crown with a big X through it. And that helps more people find out about these events, because we only have, traditional channels like social media, notifying, like print and news media, and a few other ways to get the word out. And so anything people can do to help spread that word. If you're interested in printing flyers for us and pasting them up on, cork boards or signposts, I'll put my email in the chat, and as soon as we have a flyer ready, I will send it to you.
And I know that one of the indivisible groups did a die-in after the big beautiful bill got passed at the Capitol. Speaking of chalk, you can chalk those people in, but I like what Tiffany was saying. Take your chalk, take it all over town, and write "No Kings 1018." Come to the Capitol, or come to the park in your city, or wherever your protest is going to be. And if it's in more places, more people will know about it just by walking around and seeing the chalk. Go ahead, Sarah.
Okay, I want to talk about chalk real quick. So I was in DC for a full week and the military was there, and I watched people get arrested for using chalk because it was a federal site. So just an FYI, don't know if they're going to spread that. I mean, it was absolutely crazy. And he was even held overnight until the next day, put on the last docket of the day, and was the last person on that docket. So just an FYI, but please, please use your chalk. And it was so funny because you watch it get erased by water and a hand swipe, and people write again. But my friend wasn't able to make it on Zoom here tonight. It would have been her first, but I wanted to throw out some ideas that she shared, and I'll definitely let her know that I'm sharing them. And I think it's great. She's full of ideas. She does overpasses like I do, and there's a back-to-back overpass, and they're going to do knock knock, who's there? And on the next overpass, it's going to say the Epstein files. Um, another one is oh goodness, let me find it because there's so many, but it's different things. Oh, why did the chicken cross the road? And the next one will say to get to the Epstein files. So just ideas, and just also to get passerbyers, laughing a little with this extreme stress and pressure that we're under with all that's going on. So I just wanted to share that. I thought it was great. And I'm also going to throw it out there because I'm in support of DC. I'm in Missouri. They're asking everybody to come out on November 5th and stay until the fascists have been removed. So just throwing that out there, anybody who can. You know, and we got a chance to go in and talk to all the representatives, staff only, because representatives were like, they're not here, they're on their way. And it's like closing doors so you can't see. And then the next day was Senate, but I was emotionally overcome by trying to knock on every door I could at the representatives and the disgusting looks I got from them. So that's why I'm also saying if you can get to DC, that would be great, because putting pressure on them while they're in session, let them hide. That's what they're going to do. Let them hide. So good to see y'all again.
I love
Welcome
it, Sarah.
back, Sarah. I know going to Missouri legislator offices in DC entirely too well. Were the people you talking to old enough to be out of high school?
Just barely, but let me tell you, they get all the parking down there, okay? They get all the parking. There's parking at Union Station, but other than that, forget it. Lesson learned. First time to DC, learned a lot, know what I'm doing next time.
Thank you. Go ahead, Cameron.
Sarah, was that representatives, Republicans and Democrats would shut the door on you?
Well, they weren't shutting the door, they were closing the doors within, because they really didn't want me to come on in, but I kept moving forward as talking, so they had to back up. But I was like, I know I'm not your constituent, but I was asking about the COVID vaccine that they're trying to restrict. And I explained that I had lost my oldest son to COVID and we don't want another family tragedy due to COVID. And then I also brought up about women's rights because I have 3 daughters. So, and they did not want to listen to anything, but this stuff was real emotional for me, and of course we were there to say, remove, convict, impeach, remove, convict. And but I had other agendas because I think they're vital. And so that's why I was like, I was too emotionally wrecked. And especially when these very young people are thinking they can just look right down their nose at you and that you're pathetic. And so I was like, wow. Oh, and AOC's wall is still loaded with Post-its, but I'll tell you, inside, her staff, she needs new staff. So I'm just saying. I'm not knocking AOC. She needs a different group working for her.
Cameron, they were closing the door so that she couldn't see through to see that the legislator was actually there. That's why they were closing the door.
Sorry. Yeah, they were hiding. It's like, shush, don't let this person know you're here. Because I mean, one person even said, no, they're not here. And then it's like, well, I don't know. I don't know. Well, they're busy right now too. And it's like, get your story straight. You knew we were coming. Everybody knew we were coming. That's why everyone's hiding. But they didn't have their story together.
Speaking of Missouri, one of the notable things that did happen this week that has very much gone under the radar compared to what has happened in Texas is Missouri redistricted with a supermajority to eliminate one of the 2 Democratic House districts, so that there are now 7 Republican districts and 1 Democratic district. Now, a pickup of 1 in this environment isn't going to matter much, but it is blatantly illegal and they have filed suit. The Missouri Constitution and their Supreme Court has said that they can only redistrict once per decade based on the census. So it is factually illegal for them to do it a second time. In addition to that, there is 1 precinct in Kansas City that exists both in CD4 and CD5, which also is illegal because in CD5, it is not contiguous with the rest of the district, which is also illegal by the Missouri Constitution. What I find really, really fascinating about this is because they moved everything all around, one of the reasons they redistricted the way they did before was to protect Ann Wagner, who is in the western and southern suburbs of St. Louis, who was previously in a gerrymandered district. She has been in, I've talked about her before, in a district that was 20 points Republican. Starting in 2018, they'd gotten as close as 4 points from defeating her. So in 2020, they redistricted it so it would be even harder for her to lose. Well, this time they added the southern suburbs of St. Louis, which are predominantly Democratic, and this is the time to vote her out of office as the best response to this unconstitutional gerrymandering. If they're going to do that, that means that all of their districts are going to be diluted with more Democrats and actually give some of these districts a chance to be competitive. And that's where we need to focus in those states, in Missouri, in Texas, possibly in Indiana, and picking off these districts that normally would be reliably Republican, that may be a little more purple now, that, just because it's 60-40, you have a chance to win. And the Democrats need to put the resources into those places to win the seats. Go ahead, Demetrius.
I'm a little off topic, but the Democratic Party seems so focused on Virginia. New Jersey's okay, but Virginia is kind of iffy because I get all these refused or hang-ups, or so, because of the environment that we're in and the conservative policies and everything else, maybe faith connected to their politics. So it's very hard for me, particularly in Virginia, to get something, like to get support. So I don't know what the Democratic Party will do with Virginia.
Do you mean in terms of redistricting? Because I don't
Or
think they
even
have.
getting a Democrat in through phone banking. Because I can't get anyone supporting a Democrat, especially in Virginia. I think they're very conservative. They seem very conservative, faith-based, and it's very hard to tell though, but that's what I'm hearing.
So historically, in my mind, Virginia actually has trended very Republican. It has been considered part of the Southern Bloc, um, all the way back to the Confederacy. I would say since Obama, it has been trending a little more purple and even blue in some cases. And I feel that's kind of spillover from the DC suburbs into Virginia becoming more populous. So I'm not going to get into what the Democratic Party is or is not doing, because that could take me all night. But I would look at it as a toss-up state. And I think that's one of the places that they should be fighting. But I don't know what their thinking is in terms of why or why not they would be, for example, phone banking there. But I would say that that needs to come from the party, from the elected officials, from the governor, from the statewide officials, to get behind that. And I would say if you want that, you need to get involved in the state party system, which starts with getting involved in your local Democratic Party and then moving up the ranks till you at least get on the state committee to have a voice at their statewide meetings and say, why aren't you doing this? Because nobody else is going to get to speak in front of them. You can email the chair of the state party directly. I don't know how much good that's going to do for you, but that's the only other thing that you can do besides getting that involved.
Yeah, there is phone banking. They do support virtual phone banking. I've
Yeah.
done it many times, but it's like the responses are low. They are not supportive of any candidate who's a Democrat, and some of them are very conservative, and they have stated that they have personal views and they don't want to vote Democratic. That's what I've been getting.
So there are two schools of thought on that, and the one I generally tend to land on is if they tell you they are that conservative and they're not going to vote for a Democrat ever for personal reasons, the only thing that you can do by continuing that conversation is make Democrats look more bad and reinforce the negative image they have of Democrats. You're best off hanging up and moving on to somebody who's going to be more likely. If you get somebody who may be a little more open-minded, find an area of common ground, one point, very simple, that can open up the door that you're maybe not the horrible traitor that they make you out to be, and then leave it there. But either way, it should be as short a conversation as you can have, because you are unlikely to change that person's mind.
I totally agree with Morgan. I was a door-to-door canvasser for the AFL-CIO. Probably my absolute favorite job ever. But what we were taught from the very beginning is you're just wasting your time where you could be out there talking to more supported people by standing at someone's door and arguing with them. So it's definitely the best thing you can do to just say, okay, thank you, have a nice day, if you feel like you're not getting anywhere with them. And please don't let those people get you down. Phone banking is one of the, I want to say, most daunting volunteer tasks that you can do, and I commend you for doing it. So yeah, don't let them get you down, and just move on to the next one. Sarah, go ahead.
Hey, I also wanted to inform you guys, if you're not aware, that Kansas is also looking to gerrymander their lines too. It's not just about the numbers for the Senate and the House, it's also power over the state. And I just joined Respect Missouri Voters because we're doing petitioning in order to get something on the ballot to remove the trick words so that people know that what they're actually voting for. And also, we voted for legalizing abortion, and then they decided they're going to take it away from us. So we're also trying to push, that these changes happen to where our votes count. And while they're trying to just wash it all away and restrict, I'm giving you guys this information because beware, it could be coming in your direction as well. But there's these 8 districts, and they're now saying what they're trying to push for is, if we want anything to pass, that it has to pass in every single district. So we're under Respect Missouri Voters, and they're aware of what we're doing. So now they're going to go on the ballot with Protect Missouri Voters. In other words, with some trick wording, and also where it gives them, the legislatures, the right to change the outcome of the votes, where they can decide, no, this is not happening, even though you voted it in. So this play on words, something for all the states to start thinking about is looking at the laws, what powers they may have in the legislature, and get on the ballot to lock down that they cannot take the majority vote away. But also, like I said, they're trying to make it to where if we vote, every single district must pass it, or it doesn't get passed at all. It's not a majority rule. So once again, democracy is eroding. So just an FYI. But yeah, Kansas is looking to gerrymander as well now.
And just to follow up on that, the constitutional amendment process and ballot initiative process in Missouri has been fascinating to watch for years, because even though there's a Republican supermajority and has been for a decade, a lot of liberal progressive policies have been put on the ballot and passed over and over and over again. And now the Republicans are trying to take that away, which was by definition a way for the people to bypass the legislators when they weren't representing the people's interest, to get laws passed. And now they're saying we've had enough and we're not listening to the will of the people, to the point that, to be specific, they were not only saying it needs to pass 50%. They wanted to move it up to 60% and 66% to get these ballot initiatives passed. And also, like Sarah was saying, you need to collect petitions in 6 out of the 8 congressional districts to the tune of 125,000 petitions in each one of those districts, maybe even more, to get it on the ballot in the first place. And now they're saying you need to get it to pass in 6 of those 8 congressional districts on top of all of that. All 8 of them? Yeah, I mean, the reality is this is this is not democratic, period. End of story. And that shows you where their priorities are.
That's why I was saying it's a power grab as well as the numbers for the House and the Senate. Don't think they're just doing it for, you know, the control and the power there. They want full control over the state and take away our decision making. You know, so it won't matter how we vote if they can't find a way to change the outcome, then they're going to change it themselves. So, you know, if this happens here in Missouri, you know, everything is a test state. And what works in one is going to work in another red one, and it's just going to continue to creep and spread. So just a heads up.
And just to take it a step further, Missouri has never had their own bad idea. They always take it from somebody else first. So if this is happening in Missouri, it's happening elsewhere. Florida, Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Indiana, Kansas. This isn't going to be unique just to Missouri. Go ahead, Cameron.
Okay, I just wanted to go back to ideas for the protest that's coming up on October the 18th. I went to the vigil for Jeanette Vizguero, who's being held. She's an immigrant, and she's been held now for more than 8 months. And so we went to the facility itself, which is run by GEO, which is a private prison, and she actually speaks to us from the phone inside, and it was very inspiring to hear her be so upbeat for what she's been through. And also the group that vigils every Monday night at 6 o'clock, 6 to 7:30 approximately, is hosted by a different group. And one of the things I mentioned to Tiffany is that that would be a neat project for us, for Solidarity Warriors that are here in Colorado, to host that. But what they do in their rally is they have an open mic, and everyone is encouraged to get up and say something, mostly in the form of a chant or a song, or one woman had written an absolutely wonderful poem about what it's like to be an American right now, with all of this discord and injustice going on. So they were encouraged to share their poems. So I just think those are, and I know we've had open mics before at some of our rallies at Solidarity Warriors in Denver anyway, but I think we could have more of that.
I definitely love the idea of doing the vigil. I actually just sent a message right now to the person who said he could get us in touch with the right people to host one. So yes, we are going to do that. And as far as the open mics go, unfortunately, when we had one at our protest on April 19th, something happened that really upset some people. There is the pro-Palestinian chant from the river to the sea, and it's definitely very divisive. And there are people that argue on both sides of it, but it's not something that we want to hear at our rallies. And so
more
that was
importantly,
the last thing that happened with the open mic.
if you have 10,000 people at a rally and you have an open mic, you're going to be there for days if everybody's going to speak. I mean, just practically, it's not something that you can do on that big of a stage at some place like those vigils. I think it is a great idea, and at smaller events, I am completely open to having those. If we do host one of those vigils, which I'm with Tiffany, I think we should be doing, and other smaller events like the immigration one we did a little bit. I am completely happy to let people get up and speak at them. I think it's really important and really empowering to actually hear from the people. I very much believe in give the people what they want, and you can't do that if you don't know what they have to say. So I think having an open mic like that is a good idea. I just think at a big 10,000 person rally, it's just not something that can feasibly be done. But it's certainly a suggestion that we like.
Mhm. I just want to mention one other thing, that I attended a presentation, a panel presentation right before this, Solidarity Warriors, and it was presented by Democracy Docket, and that's Eliza, is it Eliza? Mark Eliza, or Elias. And his panel was made up of Jamie Rankin and two other attorneys that I'm sure you've seen before on some other podcasts and stuff. It was a wonderful hour-long presentation about how corrupt our government is right now, and what Congress can do about that. Oh, I know, it was to celebrate Constitution Day. That's what it is. So they went over more of the rights that the Constitution has given us, and what it boiled down to, I mean, because Jamie Raskin was there, everybody wanted to say, what are you Democrats in Congress doing to help us? But they all said, people, we are the power. And they kept pointing that out, and they quoted Chenoweth, who is somebody that we had speak here with us. And they brought up the 3.5% of the American population has to be out on the streets at one time. And they also mentioned that it has to be repeated. It not only has to happen in one day, like say on October the 18th, but that it has to happen again the next week and the next week and the next week. And some people even said every day, but to overthrow a fascist government. And the panel discussion was so inspiring. It really was. And they validated what we already know, which is, the Republicans or the Democrats in Congress are not going to save us. The courts, they talked about the Supreme Court a lot. It's not going to save us. And they said the only thing that's going to save us is we, the people.
And to what Sarah was saying before, this government is by the people, of the people, and for the people. And if it is not working, it doesn't matter what they gerrymander. It doesn't matter what laws they say, what they put on the books. If the people rise up and say, we're not going to take it anymore, that's how you wind up with tea in Boston Harbor. That's how you wind up with all of the movement that led to the American experiment in the first place. This is where the American Revolution came from, is the people rising up for their rights against a dictatorial regime. And then it doesn't matter what the Republicans do, and it doesn't matter what they pass. And once they are pushed out of power, then the people can actually get the power back again to make the legislation for people. And this is a drum that we've been beating for a long time. Don't expect the Democrats to save you. Certainly don't expect the Republicans to save you. Don't expect the stacked courts to save you. This is work that we're going to have to do ourselves. And that's what we're doing. And we're just going about what you need to do to make that happen. And that's where we're at. It's not optimistic. It's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be fun. And this comes straight out of punk culture. You do what you have to do to survive. And if that means doing something really hard, Well, the other option is worse, and you go and do it. And if that means you sit in on the Capitol every day, that's great. I would love to, one of my crazy ideas is to bring homeless people from all over the country and set up a camp on the Washington Mall right in front of the White House. So every time that Donald Trump comes out of that building, he has to see what he has done to the people of this country and fight for their rights
Actually,
every single
Morgan,
day.
that's exactly what Martin Luther King, before he died, set up, and the Poor People's Campaign, going to the Capitol, did exactly what you're talking about. It wasn't homeless people;
Absolutely.
it was poor people from all over the country. But in today's day and age, I would expect that the fascists in power would not just confront us and arrest us; they would be very physical, and people would get shot. Um, but
I've said this.
I also wanted to say, you talked about the. I agree with you. The can't wait for the Democrats to save us. Can't wait for the courts to save us. God knows, we have to do it ourselves. But to invoke the tea in Boston Harbor and the American Revolution, I think if you are waiting for the American public to engage in a physical revolution like we did in 1776, I think you're dreaming there as well.
It
Um,
it
Go ahead.
it is an example of the people taking the power. It's not that I'm physically expecting the people to take up guns and start shooting at the military. I realize that's a fool's errand and is only going to get our people killed. And I agree with you. I think people would get injured. I think people would get killed. I expect people to get injured and killed. I expect the government to start using violence more and use the name of Charlie Kirk to do it as a start. I don't think this is going to last forever. And I think our commitment to nonviolence is the response to that to get the people on our side. Because when they see the brutality of a dictatorship, they're going to realize that something needs to be done about it. And I agree with you that if that were to happen, they would round them up very quickly, a day, two probably. But when you have hundreds of people going through the criminal justice system, it's not prepared to handle all of that. The jails will get filled up, and then they won't be able to arrest any more people. And exactly like you're talking about, the way they did it with the Poor People's March and campaign. And if they clear it out and put everybody in jail and it fills back up the next day, they're going to have a problem. It's not the only solution. This is a tactic that we can do that is thinking beyond the box.
Right.
And
I agree completely, and we should think beyond the box, and we should think definitely about a lot of nonviolent direct action.
right.
But and the Erica Chenoweth's brilliant article about 3.5% is not saying that we should shoot for getting that many people in the street either one day or several weeks in a row. Um, her article was a historical look and said that autocratic governments have not been able to survive when 3.5% of the public is out there actively resisting in lots of ways over a sustained period of time. It doesn't necessarily mean Cameron come out, every day to do the same demonstration, but basically to have an organized resistance that is consistent and persistent and has a large percentage of the population and that doesn't relent, doesn't let up, and that I think is what our organization is really trying to do.
And for the record, from the very beginning, we have been talking about movement building to a critical mass to make that happen. And there is both millions of people in DC every day or every week or every month, but there are also millions of people around the country coming out and doing that. Anyway, people have their hands up, so I don't want to monopolize. Go ahead, Sarah.
I want to do a follow-up with this Erica Chenoweth because I find that too many people are overlooking the final part that she says. It's not just sustaining the 3.5%, but it's also having an end goal. And without an end goal, you're achieving nothing. So with all her research, you can do all this, but you must have an end goal. And another thing is, there's no homeless allowed in DC, in the DC area. They've all been removed. If they find one taking a nap, they're arrested. I mean, there's so much crackdown in DC right now. I saw a lot go so very wrong. But if you want to check to what's going on there or any ideas or, hey, is this a good idea or share ideas, Flair USA is the one that's been there since May 1st. Amazing people, but you can reach out to them because I'm telling you, stuff that's happening there is not on the news. That stuff used to be on the news. It's no longer. So just an FYI. That's why going to DC gave me a whole new look on things.
Wow. Were the laws about the homeless in place before Trump occupied DC?
No, the homeless were allowed to exist and now they're not allowed to exist anywhere. He knew that the media would be covering things there. And I watched a guy get arrested in a banana suit. I mean, just, but yeah, we heard of the guy who fell asleep, was taking a nap, and he was arrested. Homeless, you just can't lay down anywhere. And it's like, wow. So constant silly arrests where it was just maybe a ticket would have been warranted on some things. But no, this is full on arrest, something that you should have been let out within 2 hours, but no, you're overnight. They are also transferring, some of these protesters to a different precinct too. So because now there's attorneys available. I mean, there's a whole system set out there for protesting and protective measures within the group because of all that's going on with the police and the puffing of the chest of the military. And they are trying to reach the military and let them know, we're not here against you, but please do not follow illegal orders. I mean, it's a powerful group out there. That has taken a stand for everyone here in the United States because they are going to the Capitol on a weekly basis. They are going to the White House on a weekly basis. I mean, they're doing marches and rallies and they're really, as Ukraine put it, look, I'm trying to protect the rest of you because if they take us over, they're taking you over type thing. And that's what those in DC are doing. They're really fighting for everyone.
Somebody had.
Does anyone think that we should be doing more to spread the word on what Flair is pointing out, or as Sarah just said, she went to DC and saw it, and it's appalling, and the news isn't covering it. Shouldn't we be doing something to maybe get the word out more? I have this T-shirt that I'm even wearing now. It says the most revolutionary thing you can do is to proclaim loudly what's happening. Make sure everybody in the country finds out. If it's not being covered by the regular news, spread the word and not just have it on Blair's Facebook page. Just a thought.
They really just want as many people out there as possible as a presence to let all of Congress know that we mean business. We're not standing for this. We're going to make noise. We're constantly going to make noise. I mean, when we went to the press conference of the victims, there was a fencing up, and then they had the protective fencing to keep everybody back. And then they told us, you have to move to the street. And then they're like, get off the street, get to the sidewalk, off the sidewalk, up onto the grass. Oh, there's a brick area that's laid down where people stand. No, you're not even supposed to stand on that. Get to the grass. I mean, this is what they were doing to us who were there to support the victims. They didn't, and they made sure that the victims were standing on a hill, so you really couldn't see the rest of us that were in support of. So there is a game serious game being played. But I mean, they said you make one bit of noise and you will be arrested. They had zip ties ready to go on their belt loops. I mean, they surrounded us, and if we were to interrupt any conference by making a simple noise, you would be arrested. So just an FYI, I mean, he's got so much more power there for the fact that they don't have a senator, they don't have a House of Representative. They're not really represented outside of a mayor. So he's playing and toying, and that's why they're saying, hey, everybody come to DC. Let's show them this is our country too, and we have a voice, and we're going to keep democracy. So just seeing all the restrictions and the breaking of their laws and the force against people taking a stand for everybody else was just wow. But they weren't, this group's not backing down. The veterans there are not backing down. They're standing strong. But they did a fundraise within 2 days and had to shut it down because they're like, we got to get an attorney on this, an accountant on this. It was $120,000 within 2 days raised. And they literally had to shut it down because they didn't know the laws about how to deal with these funds. And that's what's also being used to help protesters that are following legal rules that are being arrested so that they're represented by an attorney. They're doing a lot of good, and it's all nonviolence.
Sarah, somebody asked if it was the DC police or the National Guard that was arresting those people.
DC police, but the National Guard completely encased. They did the circle the wagons because literally, if someone was being arrested, like the chalk incident, everybody, that was around came within, and we're all asking, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? It's erasable. You throw water on it, it's gone. Why would you be arresting? And they could care less. But the military was used, and one strange thing about that, but they were used to encase and let the police do what they're doing. The military was a hit or miss outside. It was really bizarre. And the vehicles that they had there actually did the really loud boom, to distort, just to throw you off if need be, but they never used it, okay? They never did. It was just a show of power.
Pat, I appreciate your patience. There was somebody else who had their hand raised earlier. I want to make sure if they're still here, they have a chance to speak.
Absolutely.
I forget who that was. Are they still here?
They did.
Okay. Go ahead, Pat.
Okay. Well, I just, it's been a really rough week. Besides, I even had a death in the family. We had Charlie Kirk incident. We had the Evergreen High School incident up here. Down here, I just heard that Jimmy Kimmel got canceled for his remark about, what was it? Forget what the comment was, but that
It
his
was
show
not
got
bad.
canceled.
It was not bad at all.
He wasn't?
No.
Okay.
I looked it up earlier. Let me find it. You keep going.
And then the big thing for me this week has been what the Patel FBI guy has, his way he's gone off on the Democrats, and I haven't seen all of it, but what I just feel he's just lying completely. I don't know. So that was just kind of the highlights of this week that I wanted to kind of kick around, get some comments on. So thanks.
I'm pasting the quote in the chat.
Oh,
he said, "We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize the kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it."
okay.
That's what they said, and he is being canceled. One of the news articles I saw said they are embracing cancel culture now. The thing that they railed against for so long, they are now using against Democrats, and it's with a deliberate
and
desire to stifle the media.
Right. And, you know, all this coverage on Charlie Kirk, and they're saying the Democrats are just coming down so hard and being so violent now. But what about the two Democrats up in Minnesota that were murdered in June? I mean, we got a little up. I haven't heard a thing about it since. It's like, oh, well, another loss, whatever. But oh boy, the Charlie Kirk, boy, we got it everywhere around the world, you know?
One of the things I want to point out, and this is very, very important, one of the pages that Donald Trump is taking out of the Nazi playbook is that every accusation is a confession. Everything they are accusing the Democrats of are things that
Oh,
they
yeah,
are
yeah.
doing to inoculate themselves from being criticized for doing exactly that.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, that's been going on, not just now. It's been going on for quite a while.
Absolutely.
So,
All right, go ahead, Michelle.
I know there's a lot going on that's really negative, but I just wanted to say I saw some really inspiring ideas. We do regular weekly protests and weekly overpass protests. And some of the signs, I think there's it's called leavingmaga.org. And so the signs have that on there with the QR code. And then there's others that are like, join us. And so they'll have indivisible with the link or the QR code so that people who are driving by can just scan that and figure out how to get involved. I think there's a lot of people that want to be involved and don't necessarily know how to take that first step. And so I think that's kind of a creative way to reach out if there are people who are like driving by and giving honks and whatnot, that they can also, you know, raise their phone and scan a code. And you never know, there might be some MAGAs that want to get out. So that's all I wanted to say.
I love that. Thank you so much, Michelle. Overpass protests are such a great way to fill up your cup, is what I like to say. Going there and having all the people honk at you and support. It's amazing. And once in a while, you'll get a middle finger. But we just started calling them out like it was a road trip game, where we'll say, we got a single. Oh, we got a double. So yeah, the last overpass purchase I went to was so cool. I'm gonna, I dropped it earlier, but I'm putting an image in the chat. These are the overpass protests in Denver, over the rest of this week. So I think Thursday and Saturday are still happening. I send these out to my email list. So if you've signed up through Mobilize, you should be getting these in your email, usually on Sunday or Monday. And yeah, those are just an amazing way to do something like really positive.
So first of all, I appreciate all of the positivity that we can find and come up with, but I also want to talk about the overpass protests. A lot of what we've talked about are people who haven't gotten involved, don't know how to get involved, don't know what to do, are afraid to go to a protest for whatever reasons. The overpass actions are one of those things that you can do. You don't need a lot of time, you don't need a lot of energy, you don't need a lot of experience, and you can go and do it very, very easily. And it's pretty easy to join one that's already existing, but at the same time, you can go and do one on your own by yourself with no one else. And all of these things matter. It may seem like one small act to put a sign up over an overpass. A few hundred people may see it. What difference is it going to do? Well, once you get the message reinforced over and over and over again that there are people out there that are resisting this, it will get into a wider culture and get into people's minds on both the right and the left that this is something that exists, that is there. So don't think that any little act by itself isn't going to matter, so it's not worth doing. Even something as simple, we talked about handing signs out to businesses saying ICE isn't welcome here, and giving them signs that say private employees only, so that if ICE shows up, people who are in danger can go into that room as a safe space that, ICE can't go into without a warrant. These little acts are cumulative, and these are the things that they're talking about 3.5 million people doing. You don't need 3.5 million people, or 3.5%, 12 million people on the lawn at the Capitol to make this work. This works across the country when you get 12 million people performing acts of resistance in coordination. One of the things that keeps going through my mind is we are facing dictatorship. We are facing a tyranny. There are many ways this can end. This can wind up the way Russia did, with a dictator in power and the people so comfortable they don't even see it happening until it's too late. This can end the way it did in Syria, with a decades-long civil war. Or this can end the way it did in Yugoslavia, with a peaceful, non-violent overthrow of the regime. That history is yet to be written, and we are writing it as we go. And that's why this is so important, because we need to make that difference before it's too late. And we can't wait for somebody else to do it. Which is why I keep saying, whatever it is that you can do, do. And if that's an overpass protest, that's great. If that's organizing an indivisible group, that's great. If that's organizing a mass protest in your city, that's great. If you can get a march from San Diego to Washington of 1 million people, do that. Even if it's phone banking for your local Democrats in Virginia, the way Demetrios was talking about. Every little bit matters because it cumulatively adds weight to our side of the scale. And I fully agree, we need to have a goal. And I'm tired of waiting for somebody else to say it. My goal is to get Donald Trump out of power. Start there. Because that's what we need to do. Because the Republicans aren't going to impeach him. The courts aren't going to take him out. He's going to want to run for a third term. And he's going to want to win 98% of the vote the way Putin does. People who think that he's not going to run and he's going to let J.D. Vance take over for them are deluding themselves. If it were up to him, this would have been the last election you had to vote in, because he said it. When he says it, believe him. And that's what we're doing. And that's why we're doing it. And what happens after we get him out of power, I'm willing to have a conversation. And I'm willing to discuss those goals with other people in the movement. And I have my own ideas about what goals I have for that. But that's for then. And this is now. And now, we need to be as punk as we can and resist everything we can. And I think at 7:31, that's a pretty good place to stop. And just, I want to do one thing before we go and show you, this is the shirt that I got to commemorate this. I'm having a hard time showing it. There we go. That's a little better.
I love it. Yeah, we can see it. Yeah, it's a really cool shirt. Did you get it from PBS?
I did get it from PBS, and I am going to post the links again before we end so that people can go and check on them. And in particular, look at the Vice one that says punks who weren't actually involved in the scene or even the music. If you don't look at anything else, look at that. All right, go ahead, Jeanette, before we finish.
Yeah, a couple things coming up that I just wanted to mention. On the 21st, Sunday the 21st, coming up at 2 o'clock at First Unitarian, which is at 14th and Lafayette. There's the Middle East group that's putting on a time of, I think it's about an hour and a half, of music, and I don't even know what kind of music. I know Jamie Laurie's going to be there. I'm going to be there, and Jamie is the other side of him is Johnny Five, and so we're actually showing up to see what they're doing. So we don't even know what they're doing, but it's a time to try to get people. So it's supposed to be, it's called Singing for Peace. So that's one thing coming up. The following week, same place, different time, 10:30. There's a service that's put on by the part of the church that's called Democracy in Action. And that'll be sort of a celebration of people beginning to take action and what their commitments are to that, calling more people, their neighbors, more people out to that. And also after that, there's a talk back. Those of you who know Joanna Macy's work, which is Active Hope, there's a talk back afterward that uses her spiral for a conversation with people about how it goes is basically, what are you grateful for? What's breaking your heart? How can we see the world differently? And what actions are we taking? And that'll last about an hour afterward at 12 o'clock. So, just to comment on, there's also groups, and Tiffany and I have talked about it this week, who are beginning trainings and starting to go out to businesses with flyers. Some of you have heard about that on trainings that have been put out by Indivisible and others to businesses, small businesses, especially, trying to give them information about how they can protect people who are undocumented, how they can create spaces in their businesses where they can go to the back and there's a sign that says this is public, private, keep out. And, I guess the thing that I'd say most in terms of going forward, a lot of people are asking this question of, is any of this making a difference? And it's early to tell what kinds of dents we're making, but I think it's the both end of, we need big days. We just do. And we can't have them every week. We can't have them every month, but we have to have a few of them, and the people need them. On the other hand, we need to, I think, start trying to be, and I think you're trying to have that conversation here, trying to have creative conversations about how we get more people. And that means not always going to the same places, the same times, and expecting new people to be there. We got to find new ways to get out to people that just aren't even being touched yet. And that remains to be seen how we do that. But I see creativity coming out in all directions. There's a person on the 28th at First Unitarian is going to be doing a mural, and she's going to auction it off and then give the proceeds. But it's about free speech, and she's going to have everybody painting on it and everybody writing what they think of free speech, and then raising some money for it and giving it out to organization that's dealing with free speech. Those seem like small things, but Trump has the advantage at this point of having a huge military and huge police forces and National Guard and all that. It's real easy to shake your finger and get 1,000 people at once. We don't have that. We've got to come up with creative, interesting ways to start and keep building. And it takes longer, but hopefully what we come up with over time is going to be something that really has fortitude and resilience, and is going to be real interesting to watch. So let's not be too discouraged by how many people he's got at his disposal. It's a big machine. It's hard to take a big machine down, but that's what we've got to do, little by little.
There are more
Thank
of
you,
us than there have
Jeanette.
been.
I always love hearing from you. Can you please send me the details? Jamie sent me the flyer for the 21st, but the part that you just said, the extra information, can you please send me that in Slack or Signal?
Yep.
And I'll put it in the email tomorrow.
And I just wanted to add, going back to talking about having an open mic at these events, this part of our meeting we have every week, and we want people to come and speak and act like it is an open mic, so that people can talk about these things and say, I want to do this, how do I do it? Or I am stuck, what can we do? Or just have a chance to say the things that are on their mind that we can incorporate into a movement that includes everyone. So we may not be able to have an open mic at the new No Kings rally, but this is certainly a forum where we want to hear from people and give everybody an opportunity to speak. and we try very hard and frequently go late in an effort to make sure that everybody is heard and has the opportunity to say what is on their mind, even if it's not related to what we're talking about, even if it's a comment, even if it's, even not actionable. If it's on somebody's mind, chances are somebody else wants to hear about it. So just know that that is out there. And if you need a place to come and speak, we are here to listen. It's not a one-way street. We're not saying, this is top down, this is what you have to do. This is about bringing everybody into a larger movement so that we do have the critical mass to make a difference.
Hey, Morgan, I just want to mention one more thing. I saw it in the chat that 2 Black men in Tennessee were lynched. I have not seen that go across anything I've been looking at, so I didn't want to just ignore it and let it go, only to say that I'm going to go look at that or for that when we get off, because it's not something I just want to read and go, oh, well, that's another new normalized thing. It's just I hadn't heard about it and I
Right.
don't know much more about it.
I just heard
It
about
was
it today.
actually in Mississippi. Somebody found sent a link to the news article. I'll put that back in the chat. The CNN article that I just linked.
Thanks.
It looks like a Black man was found hanging on the university campus, and they're saying there were no signs of foul play, but his family is raising questions.
And I had just heard about them too. My understanding is it dates back at least to September of 2025 for the young man in the CNN article. There were reports that there were bodily injuries, broken bones, bruises, signs of attack, and the coroner has come out and said that is not true. But I don't think they have. I mean, when you find someone hanging in a sports stadium on campus, chances are that's not a suicide. And I haven't seen anything disputing that fact in particular. They were disputing the fact that there were broken bones and bodily injuries leading to it being a lynching. But just because he didn't have broken bones and bruises doesn't mean he wasn't lynched and hanged. So I think some of that detail is still unresolved. Let me put it that way. I'm not going to say whether this was or was not what it looks like, but it is suspicious, at least in my mind.
Thank you for bringing up checking sources, Jeanette. I think that's an important point for all of us, that the left is maybe not as guilty as the right, but we do spread disinformation when we, take something at full value and don't vet it against, reputable sources like news organizations that we can still trust. So yeah, that's a great thing to do. Oh, and Jeanette, somebody asked if I could email out basically everything you said tonight, the ideas that you had. So if you can throw that into a message to me as well, that would be amazing. All right, is there anything anyone else would like to add tonight? This was a really great discussion. I really had a good time tonight. All right, let's call it a night. Thank you all. Oh, Cynthia, sorry, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I just wanted to encourage people to check out Substack as a source of news. A lot of the news anchors who have been fired from their jobs at CNN and CBS and NBC have all gone to Substack, and you can get a lot of reliable news at Substack. So I really encourage people to go there. That's where I'm getting all of my news now because I can't rely on the regular news stations that we used to. But they carry, you'll find everything. Now you always have to obviously double check some things that you have questions about, like the hangings, but those were automatically put there. Charlie Kirk's death was automatically put there. I mean,
as soon as it comes out, there's somebody covering it. DC, the soldiers, all of it, there's somebody covering it. The guy that threw the sandwich at the police officer and got arrested for that, that was there, you know, and showed what happened. So Substack's great.
And Substack is a platform, and there are a lot of different people on Substack, and I've found a hell of a lot of them really just fascinating reads, and again, very reliable, as Cynthia said.
Yes.
But Substack isn't just like one place to go. It's lots of different people publishing, and they're terrific.
Right. But the platform is excellent. I mean, you can find Tim Snyder and Judge. Oh gosh, who's the judge that talks? The constitutional judge.
Ludwig.
Yeah, Judge Ludwig's got a channel there. I mean, you can get a lot of really, really good stuff there.
Mark Elias has Democracy Docket, Anand Giridharadas,
Mm-hmm.
Lucid by Ruth Ben-Ghiat, Anat Shankar Ocasio is on there.
Yeah, there are a lot of excellent newscasters there, authors, all kinds of people, judges, lawyers. Is a lawyer, a legal AF, which is a network of attorneys that speak. So you can get a lot of good information at Substack. Really encourage that one.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Thank you. Any last thoughts? All
Well,
right. I love all of you.
Carol just put
And
something in the chat that's really amazing. Kirk
what
was
did she
killed.
say?
She said she thinks Kirk was killed because he was pushing for the Epstein files to come out.
Interesting. That is a
Yeah.
very hot take. All right. I hope you
Thanks.
all have a wonderful evening.